Good morning. Hey, good morning, Lynn with an I. Glad you're with us. Marissa, good to see you as well, or see your name anyway.
Hi there. Yes, I'm on. So if you need help with the chat box or anything, I can help.
Oh, that'd be great. Thanks. Lynn with a Y has also volunteered to help, but she's got a commitment at 9. So if you can keep an eye on it, I'd sure appreciate it.
Sure.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Lynn with an I.
If the background noise gets too much, just tell me. I'll turn the mic off. I'm sitting here in ops.
Right on. So is that a yurt or a hard-sided building, Lynn?
It's a yurt.
Yeah. You see that lessons learned about the yurt fire in, I can't remember if it was Idaho or Montana.
I did. It came up. We discussed that as part of our safety message with the team.
Yeah. Scary stuff.
Yeah. It was arson.
Well, then I'm guessing it was probably not the Reed yurt. It was probably a different yurt. Hopefully it was not Reed yurt.
Did not. I didn't read the whole thing. Just heard about it. I saw it and then heard about it. But yeah, I guess 2 people were sleeping in that yurt when somebody lit it up. A homeless person lit it on fire.
3:30 in the morning. It's like my best time to sleep.
Yeah. Luckily, everybody got out okay.
Yeah, I heard they said no injuries, so that's good.
Lynn with a Y.
Lynn Robinson, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, guys. Lynn with a Y.
Lynn with a Y.
Coming in at the last minute.
Yeah, no worries. We'll get going here in just a minute or so.
And just FYI, my chat is not working, so I'm gonna try leaving and starting it over again. So I'll be back.
Right. Marissa is always on deck, also on deck to help, so that's a good deal. Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah. No dice.
Any better, Lynn?
No, I'm not getting the chat. So maybe it's time for, I'll restart the computer.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll be back on in just a little bit.
All right, perfect. All right, 11:30 Eastern time by my clock. So we'll go ahead and get started. I believe recording's already going. Lynn, is that right?
I believe so. Let me double check. Yep, still going.
Well, perfect. Hey, welcome everybody to the September 2022 monthly call of the Resource Advisor Cohort, the Reed Cohort. This is our regular topic call, and we are an interactive community of folks interested in all aspects of resource advising in wildland fire and all hazard incidents in the broadest sense of the term resource advising. So thanks for joining us today. Today's call will hopefully be highly interactive, and you folks will help make it that way. This month, we do not, as we have most months, have a panel or a formal presentation. We do have open season questions and answers. And it's a time for your questions on whatever's on your mind that has anything to do with resource advising, and responses also from the group. So please either raise your hand or type things into the chat, and we'll take it from there. There are no dumb questions except the ones that do not get asked. Again, it's wide open, and it's on all aspects of reef and reed and arc and technical specialist topics. I'm your moderator, but I am definitely not the sole responder or the responder in chief. So we'll look to ourselves, to the group, for responses as well as for questions. So with that as background, I'd encourage you to start typing in the chat any questions you may have. I'm Pete Irvin. I'm based in Roanoke Valley of Southwest Virginia, lands of the Tutello people. I'm one of the volunteer cohort managers, but I'm certainly not the be-all and end-all of reefs and reeds and arcs. And I'm certainly not the bestest technocrat, operating on a single screen tablet, so relying on some of my fellow cohort managers to help me through with questions and responses. Our general outline today, we are going to briefly talk about the current fire situation, and then your questions and answers, with a couple of brief chats with a couple of guests that we'll introduce later, and a brief wrap up at the end. And so with that, here's the low-tech version of the current fire situation. And for those of you that are newbies, this is the SIT report. This is the IMSR. This is the Incident Management Situation Report, published daily during the fire season by the National Interagency Coordination Center, which is, of course, part of NIFC, the National Interagency Fire Center. During the fire season, which is defined as any time we're at PL2 or above, it's published daily. And when we're not at that PL preparedness level, it's published weekly. And it's based on, it's a great foundation to get your situation awareness. Lynn or Marissa, if one of you who is savvier than I can share screen with the SIT report front page, that would help us. Sorry, my low-tech Ludditism is apparent this morning. Today's SIT report shows that we're at preparedness level 3. And if you don't know what the definition of the preparedness levels are, then the place to go look is, like all things related to fire, It's nifc.org. I'm sorry, nifc.gov. Several ways to get there, and sometimes having so many options confuses me, but I generally just go to nifc.gov. You can scroll down and look at the current today national stats, but if you look at the gray bar and click on fire information, you'll see links to the IMSR. Or the way I prefer to go is to get to nifc.gov and to click on the gray bar under NICC, NICC, the National Interagency Coordination Center. And then there's what comes up there is a map showing the GACs, the Geographic Area Coordination Centers. And on the left-hand side, all kinds of tabs. If you just click on incident information and then the incident management SIT report, you can get to today's SIT report. Also, from that same view, if you go down to predictive services, you can find information about how to read the IMSR. Hey, thanks for putting that up. So here's today's. And that top table is the summary. So from yesterday, so last 24 hours, based on submitted ICS 209s, the incident status summaries that every fire's planning shop puts together and gets approved by the IC at least once a day. 55 new initial attacks yesterday, which meets the criteria for light. 5 of those turned into new large incidents. And at this, over that same 24 hours since the last SIT report, 2 large fires have been contained. There's currently nationwide 24 large fires that are being managed under a full suppression strategy. And then no area command teams engaged, no NEMOs engaged, 7 type 1 IMTs, 8 type 2 IMTs, and 1 complex IMT. And if you don't yet know what a complex IMT is, it's a good thing to learn up on because it's the wave of the future, folks. It's been piloted in the Northern Rockies GAC. So instead of having type 1 and type 2 teams rostered in the Northern Rockies, all of their IMTs are listed as CIMT. And there's a pretty major effort ongoing right now to operationalize or broaden this from a pilot. And NWCG has accepted the results of the pilot study, and we're going to be moving to this CIMT concept over the next couple of years. If we can scroll down through the SIT report, there is a link within the SIT report to a document called Understanding the SIT Report. It's a 7-pager, and it's mighty handy if you get bogged down in trying to figure out how and why things are the way they are in the SIT report. The folks at NICC work mighty hard to put this together full time every day during fire season. There's always an opportunity for special statements, and in this case, the special statement involves a military aircraft that we've activated through cooperative agreement doing DRTI work across several fires. And maybe let's scroll all the way down to the Northwest area. The active incident resource summary page gives a good snapshot of what's going on. As of This morning, there's almost 12,000 people, personnel engaged in wildland fire, and that's actually down 1,247 from the day before. The highest number I saw in terms of official engaged on active incidents was over 19,000 earlier this year. And then the SIT report breaks things down by GAC, and they're listed by priority of GAC. So the Northwest area is in a preparedness level 3, and they're the lead GAC today. And the lead fire within the lead GAC is the fire that our cohort guru Lynn Gassaway is coming to us from this morning, Cedar Creek on the Willamette. Number 1 fire in the nation today with 2 type 1 teams engaged at the moment. In general, you can say with certainty, or I've always said with certainty, that the number 1 fire and the number 1 GAC is what's listed first. But beyond that, things get murky. Each GAC is responsible for reporting their fires in their priority order. And then the folks at NIC decide which GAC is the highest priority and the second priority, but they don't claim to prioritize fires beyond the number 1 fire in the nation. So you can't say that the number 5 fire in the number 1 GAC is a higher priority than the number 1 fire in the number 2 GAC. Enough math for you? So folks, if you don't already spend some time or have this bookmarked, I'd highly encourage you to. The information here gives you a heck of a great snapshot, and we can just, if you would, scroll on down to the summary for the GAC, so we can see that in addition to the narrative information for Cedar Creek and Double Creek and Sturgill and Nebo, we've got the incident stats summarized. Cedar Creek is 113,637 acres today, 14% contained, with 2,356 people assigned, 44 crews, 79 engines, 12 helicopters, no structures lost, and a cost to date of $78.5 million. I think one of the things that a lot of the incidents listed on today's SIT report have in common is their estimated date of containment, which is usually either October 31st or November 1st or November 15th, some type of, which is a placeholder in my mind for a season-ending event. At this point in the season, as you all know, we're waiting on season. We're working towards season-ending events. And folks, I might anticipate one of your questions here, and that sort of is, it sort of works into the preparedness level that I mentioned earlier. And this year, unlike the last 2 fire seasons, we never got to preparedness level 5. And the 2022 fire season so far only spent a very short time at preparedness level 4. Actually, just 9 days, 10 days, all earlier this month. So those of us that look back to last year and the year before and how early we went to PL4 and PL5 and how long we stayed at PL4 and PL5, might be lulled into thinking that this is not that bad of a year, since we never got to PL5 and we only got to PL4 for a short period of time. But I'd offer that that's kind of a biased view. You can't get to 4 or 5. The formal definition of a preparedness level 4 is that 3 or more GACs are experiencing large, complex wildfires requiring incident management teams. And geographic areas are competing for suppression resources, and about 60% of the country's teams and personnel are committed. So until you reach some thresholds, it's there is some objectivity in going to preparedness level 4, and then 5, the highest level of wildland fire activity. Several GACs have large complex incidents which have the potential to exhaust national wildland firefighting resources, and at least 80% of IMTs and firefighting personnel are committed. And at this level, all fire qualified federal employees become available for wildfire response. PL5 is when the Moses letter comes out. Hey, last thing I'd like to look at on the SIT report is to scroll to about the 10th page, which is the fires and acres year-to-date summary. There's more great information in here, folks, and if you ever get a chance to just print out a SIT report, print out that document that's available at the NIFC site called Understanding the IMSR, you can really do a deep dive. But I'd just point out, and I'd scroll down and show us the bottom half of that, if you will. So every SIT report towards the end of it lists fires and acres yesterday by ownership or protection area, and then fires and acres year to date by protection area. So so far this year, there have been 51,606 fires. Let's scroll just a little further down and capture that 10-year average stuff. So those 51,600 fires have burnt 6,815,000 acres. And even though we spent just a little bit of time at PL4 and no time at PL5 this year, we're way above the 10-year average. And that 10-year average is not for full years, it's for year to date for the past 10 years. So if you look at comparing this year with the last 10 years, we're well above average in number of fires, 51,000 over 44,000. We're well above acres, 6.8 million acres versus 6.2 on average. Now, admittedly, a lot of that comes from a record fire year in the Alaska GAC. 588 fires for over 3 million acres. So folks can argue either way, whether that makes this nationwide a real severe year, a severe year, or a moderately severe year. But I'd sure say, based on number of personnel on the fire line, a high of almost 20,000 folks at one time being on the fire line, and the shortage of resources, especially in specialty categories, including resource advising, that it's been a significant, severe fire year so far. Started out with a bang, kind of tapered off, and now we're sort of in the middle of it as weather patterns start to change and we start looking towards season-ending events. Enough said on that, and I appreciate the screen share of the SIT report. folks highly encourage you to dive in when you have a little time, like us old retired guys do, and dive in and learn some of the complexities of the SIT report. That said, I'm guessing and hoping that we've got some questions by now, and so I'll go to the chat and go as far back as I can.
We have a hand up, Daniel.
Oh, great. Daniel, go ahead. You're on, brother. Come on off mute.
Hey, thank you. Just Dan, please. But hey, so in terms of suppression repair, last number of years, something that I've seen increasingly used in suppression repair, as opposed to water barring, is what folks have been referring to as soil pitting or chunking or waffling, and we've seen some great success with it. And I was curious, however, I'm trying to sell it to some other people. I just moved, changed to a different district to the BLM here, and I'm trying to sell it to some new folks here, and they're asking if I have any technical papers on it. And I realized, I've seen the evidence that it works real well, but I don't have any technical papers. And I was curious if anyone on the call in our resource advisor cohort might have something like that.
All right, Dan, thank you. So, soil pitting, soil waffling. Tell me the other term you used.
Soil pitting, waffling. I last year I heard some folks calling it chunking, which there you go. That works too.
Right on.
There's a couple of people in the chat calling it fluffing, moguls, potato patching,
all of that.
bucket rip. Yeah. I wish Courtney Rowe was on this call because she uses that a lot, Aaron, when she's doing suppression repair. I think she does have some research on it. Sort of stalling for time, seeing if anybody else actually has that answer.
Yeah, right on. So I get the gist of it. It's a technique you've got some personal experience with, and you're wanting to see done more, but folks are wanting to see the proof in terms of a technical report, some sort of documentation, and not seeing any of that, any references to an official report. I know the Rocky Mountain Experiment Station of the Forest Service has been doing a really good job, I think, for at least the last year of putting out some pretty regular technical summaries on a weekly basis of what's going on. So there may be something there, but I'm not familiar with it. So we'll move on.
Yeah, we'll try to get you some answers and put them in the chat and get them out to the cohort. I can say that one thing for suppression repair that is news. We're trying. There's been a long number of years that the San Dimas Research Station has been working on repair, like a repair guide, the same way we have the bear guide. Sorry. And they're going to start a renewed effort on that, and including doing some field research on how successful different techniques have been. And so we hope in the next year or two to get a publication out.
Very cool. Thank you, guys.
All right. Hey, let's move to a question. When archaeologists' ARCs are being requested for hazard tree removal on a fire, what is expected from the archaeologist? Is there typically HPay? Simple question.
I can take that as, yeah, as an archaeologist. So if you're ordered up as a single resource and you're you're working right alongside the firefighters who are in a hazardous situation. You should be, and they're getting HPA, you should be getting HPA. You're in the same hazard. And some of the new direction in the Red Book and new direction that is going through NWCG through the subcommittee definitely reiterates that it's the location, it's the situation, the hazardous situation that you're in, not the position that you work in, that creates whether you get hazard pay or not. The one exception is if you are just like a driver and you're just driving through the area, you can slow down and avoid the hazardous situation. Then you don't get hazard pay. But if you're sitting there working in it and you're working at the same tempo and working with those crews, yes, you should be getting hazard pay. I will tell you, if you're called up on some assignment that isn't a direct fire assignment, sort of the one big example that I know of is the hazard fuel removal in the giant sequoias. That I don't know whether they're getting hazard pay or not. I think they're not. I think they're just getting fire money that's doing that, and they're running it like a type 3 incident. But I believe because that's timed, controlled, and everything else, it's more like a fuels project that they aren't getting hazard pay, but I could be wrong on that one. It's definitely, it's a fire assignment, uncontrolled fire line. You should be able to document that on your CTR and get hazard pay as an archaeologist.
Yeah, so pretty straightforward question with lots of layers in the answer. I'll just tag on to what Lynn said about that one project that has been advertised a fair bit, the Forest Service, Sequoia, I get the name wrong, but it's the effort to reduce hazard trees in the Sequoia groves. And there are some definite special considerations with that project. It's an incident, but not a fire. And so you should definitely, if you're interested specifically in that, call the contact and get your questions answered before you sign on for it. And I'll just, in my Luddite way, refer to the Red Book that Lynn talked about. Officially, it's the Interagency Standards for Fire Aviation Operation. It is updated every year. This year has well over 500 pages in it, and there is some new direction this year specifically about HPay for unique positions, let's say, non-crew type positions. And man, it's part of my kit in both hard copy and digital format. It's always available on the NIFC website, among others. Let's do one more question and we'll go to one of the guests. Here's one. As someone who has never had to fly to take a read or reef assignment, but may in the future, I'm wondering about suggestions and advice about flying with fire gear. Check everything. Check your line bag or put it in another bag. Anything that could be damaged should be carried on. And I'll take a first stab at a response on this one as somebody that always has to fly across the Mississippi for a Western assignment. Definitely don't just strap your IA gear like it is. Definitely put it inside something else because there's just too many ways for it to get damaged. I check my IA gear and all my gear and always carry on a bag that has my essentials in it for a day or two in case things get lost. But I know that when I get to an incident, I'm almost always going to a type 2 or a type 1 incident. And in a pinch, I can get a fire shelter and a hard hat, an eye pro, ear pro, and a tool. I do always wear my fire pants and pack a fire shirt and wear my boots when I'm getting on the airplane, even though the TSA people don't like that. Other folks with a response to the question of flying and gear?
Take all fusees out of your bags.
Ooh. Yeah, fusees, and then multi-tools and knives and all that kind of good stuff needs to
Nice.
get checked. Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah, watch your knives. I carry lots of little knives in my pants or in my little a fire wallet, and I've had totally forgot about them and trying to go through an airport and getting them confiscated. So yeah, make sure you check all the places that you hide things, especially if you have to fly really quickly after demo and you aren't in civies.
Yeah, good point.
Hey,
Yeah, I'd like
I
to
have
reach
a
out at this time and see if Tom DeMayo is with us. I should be able to tell if you're here, Tom, but I can't. Are you on with us?
Yes, I'm on, Pete.
Hey, great. Appreciate it, man. And thanks for coming. Thanks for joining. I know you've been a busy fella recently.
Well, I just got off Cedar Creek and Lynn's still there.
Yeah, I understand. Her background is much more yurt-like than yours is this morning.
Yeah, I just got back yesterday.
Cool. Well, folks, I asked Tom, who I had the pleasure of meeting in Idaho a few weeks ago, to come on and give us a couple of thoughts. So, Tom, first of all, who are you? What's your job?
Sure. I'm Tom DeMayo. I'm the regional ecologist for the Pacific Northwest Region Forest Service. I'm also the regional coordinator for collaborative landscape projects.
And I know you've been busy this summer. I know about two, but you're I think a fairly long time lead read and pretty darn active in read duties. You want to
Yeah,
spell out this summer?
in recent years, I've been going out as a lead. I still have a lot to learn. On every incident, you learn things, you get better. You learn from your mistakes and you go forward. This year, I was on Calf Canyon in May and then Moose in August. And then, as I mentioned, I just finished up on Cedar Creek, the West Zone.
Yikes. So, Tom, give us a sense during your three lead read assignments. How big was your read team, your read reef arc team during your assignments?
That's a good question. I think in each case was around 10 reads. It fluctuates. The last week or so, we ramped up on Cedar Creek, so I think we were up to about 15. Although now it's going to decline again. I think appropriately. On Cap Canyon, we probably had a little bit more than 10. You kind of gauge the size of the fire and the divisions and how active things are. And then when you go into the repair phase, you definitely need to make sure you have enough reeds and arcs for that.
Right on, Tom. And your team was a combination, I'm assuming, of folks with a lot of experience and maybe some newbies as well.
Yeah, and it varies. I think on Cedar Creek we had mostly experienced reeds. We did have a couple trainees. I do like to bring on trainees and get new people trained up, but it's very much a case by case basis of your situation, who's available. There's usually strong interest from the local unit to have folks on. We try to accommodate that. I really do like a diversity on the read team, diversity of experience, skill sets, male, female, racial diversity. I strive for all that to the best that I can.
So, Tom, we were on Moose together. I was there as a PIO during your last few days as a lead read. And, what struck me a couple things was that even though there was some pressure to reduce the size of the IAP every day. You managed to have a really good read message in the IAP, and you always spoke it briefing in the morning. So wonder if you might just chat about how important you feel those kind of things are.
Well, we had a really good read message every day because of Greta Braun-Palkowski, who was a co-lead with me. So we had strong capacity on the lead read front, and she took care of that every day and did a really good job with that. I do like to talk at morning briefing every day. It shows the flag and lets everybody know the reads are there. And then, as Lynn has pointed out, it's also a good opportunity to educate people on topics like this is why we're protecting water resources. This is why we care about our resources. So I've tried to incorporate that into it as well. And you don't get much time, so it's usually just a few sentences.
Yeah, right on. So Tom, before I let you go, couple of tips, couple of things, looking back at your 3 big experiences this year, some things that went well and a couple things you want to try to improve on.
Things that went well. I think I managed the read team well, making sure we had enough people, the right skill sets, putting them in the right divisions, getting efficiency of output. I'm still learning how to work better with operations teams. Lynn might speak to that. I still have some things to learn there about how to be more effective and efficient. It seems like our incidents are getting bigger and more complicated, and there's a lot of moving parts. And I think I could do better on some of that.
Copy that, Tom. Thanks. I'm personally fascinated in how you do your day job in addition to being gone so much, but that's probably a deeper conversation. You must have a boss that's supportive.
Desperation is always a good leadership trait.
Right on. Thanks. Let's hey, Marissa or Lynn, maybe you can pick a question out. I'm having trouble multitasking here.
Oh, I want to take on the one that Hannah Robinson brought up, and even though I know Hannah just told me she dropped off, she had a meeting to go to. I'd like to talk about it. So it sums up a lot. It's a big issue. It's a lot of consternation to people. So just to read her question for people that lost it in the chat or haven't seen it yet. It's how do we handle large scale fuel breaks, contingency lines, that are actually timber sale related, question mark. It is an obvious use of fire equipment money and bodies to circumvent NEPA and complete forest projects. Any thoughts or discussions would be appreciated. First, I'm going to just, that not all of these, well, I'm going to handle it from my perspective as a liaison working for a type 1 team. And as I feel a lot these days, sometimes if my younger body looked at me now, they would think I was a bit of a turncoat. And why am I saying the things I say now that I didn't think in the past? But part of it's just a learning experience, and there are a lot of contingency lines, big contingency lines that are going out miles out from the active fire. Part of it is the world we live in now. And I'm not saying that all of them are right. I'm not saying all of them aren't for other reasons or political reasons. But there are quite a lot that are going in really for good, valid fire suppression reasons. And there is, I think that we need to catch up on the learning curve of that. But also not to give up the fight for the inappropriate ones or the ones that damage resources. So hopefully we can bridge the gap, also bringing knowledge on both sides. And I'll just do an example from the one I'm currently on, Cedar Creek. So we got here, my team came here over a month ago for our first goal. and that we were the second type 1 team on the fire. And there was a big box what we call a big box putting in big contingency lines very far out from the fire. It seemed like, what are they doing? It's a pretty small fire, but the reason was there's a town. There's a couple towns. There's houses, and the reality of this part of the world, especially after 2020, and the big this forest, these towns were affected by the east wind event in 2020. Holiday Farm, farther north, Lions Head, Beachy Creek, and each east fire wind events are not uncommon here. They are very common every year, 3 or 4 of them every year. And so that was the tactics that were taken. It was a decision. You can't go direct. We're going to have to wait this fire out for months until a season-ending event, and we're going to put in a fuel break, and hope the fire never gets there. The reality is today, we came back, we left, we came back, and there had been an east wind event that took the fire to those control lines that were being put in a month beforehand. The firefighters are putting in, we call them a PACE model, primary, auxiliary, contingency, and emergency lines, and putting those in because you get it into time wedges and fire event wedges that you can't always just put in a primary and expect that it's going to hold. It's not to say that things aren't getting political and that AAs aren't expecting things from teams that turn into much bigger things and that are never used, but just there is a lot of firefighting tactics that need those lines. So I hope we can bridge the gap of pushing the issue on the ones that really are not appropriate, but also understanding the ones that seem really inappropriate, but are actually appropriate. And sometimes we don't know that for months afterwards. So I'll let some other people come in because I know there's a lot of viewpoints on this one.
Thanks, Lynn. Anybody else want to weigh in on this topic? Don, I'm going to mispronounce your last name, but Don Y, go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, morning. Yeah, I have come to this issue probably very similar to Lynn in that the first ones I saw going in like this quite a few years ago. Yeah, I was like, what's going on? But similar to Lynn, I think I've kind of changed my thinking over the years. I've seen on my local district here in Eastern Washington, one contingency line that has been used 4 times now over the last 8 years and reopened. So a couple thoughts. One is where we are, the ecology allows our fuel breaks to be very similar, perhaps exactly the same as our restoration prescription. So we're lucky, and the ones that we have put in here, are very similar to what we would do in a restoration project. That's not true on every ecosystem, but it is it is in a lot of areas. So but back to the original question, I discussed this with the local experts, and whether it's your fuels planners or your ecologist or silviculturist on your district, and just get dialed into what those local conditions are and what those prescriptions might look like, and then raise that with the AA, and if it's not looking like it's kosher, and then don't get too hung up with it. Don't take it too personally. We can only do what we can do as resource advisors, and try to minimize if there are impacts occurring. We're just trying to minimize the impacts out there. Anyway, that's That's my perspective on that issue.
Don, thanks. Appreciate that. I want to reach out to Dave Calorie. Dave, you with us?
It's for the white.
I see you now, brother. Hey, I saw your hand raised, and I was planning to go to you anyways. Got to meet Dave briefly, also on the Moose Fire. He rotated in, I think, after Tom DeMayo. So, Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. But maybe before I do, just one more quick thought. In addition to what Lynn and Don had to say about contingency lines, first I definitely echo pretty much all the sentiments expressed, but and I do agree with you that it's it's one of those things where you just kind of like, oh, seriously, sometimes, and it does feel, a little, I don't know, uncomfortable, as land managers to be doing some of that kind of stuff, sort of on the sly, or at least that's the feeling you get, right? The only thing I want to add is once the decision's been made to go ahead and do that, it's really important that we make sure the team follows through and doesn't leave a bigger mess behind. And a lot of times, that can take the form of massive slash piles, jackpots, all that kind of stuff. Not to mention decks of logs all over the place. And so it is on the team in the repair phase of the assignment to deal with the mess they made there, just like everywhere else. And yeah, I should defer to Lynn now in case she wants to tell me I'm wrong.
No, I think you're totally right. Like I said, one go back for me is another experience is sometimes, we really want to minimize impacts on the fire. As a resource advisor, we're giving this advice to minimize impacts, and totally appropriate, completely appropriate. But there is also a point of that we as resource advisors may not, our minimum thing may not be what is needed for firefighter safety. And we really need to have that discussion too. Like we want, if you're doing a roadside, fuel break or whatever, shaded fuel break, and you say, don't put a boom, everybody has to stay on the roadbed and you can only reach out 25 feet and your trees are 150 feet. Well, a 150-foot tree can smack a firefighter that's standing on the road. And you got to be able to burn off that in a safe manner. And once you start burning, you're getting more hazard trees. So having the firefighters have to go back and hazard tree it after you've already done the thing, or expand your mitigation, expand the cut afterwards, puts them in double jeopardy. So having that discussion of how can we protect the resources and meet firefighter safety at the same time at the start, I think will be better for both of us, and we can then have the risk reward discussion. So I'll go back to you, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. And this is Pete. I asked Dave to come on like I asked Tom to come on because I knew he had some recent, very active lead read experience. And so, Dave, let's go into who you are and what you've been doing this summer.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm Dave Calorie. I'm a hydrologist. I'm based out of Helena, Montana. Worked in the northern region, mostly at the national forest level, then at the RO, and right now at the moment I'm actually working for the WO as in the post-fire program, so bear, bar, and that kind of stuff. And yeah, like Pete said, I followed Tom as the lead read on the Moose Fire on the Salmon Chalice. Been a few weeks now.
And Tom, were you there during the wind event, the Eastern Push?
I was on Cedar Creek, but not on Moose. It was fairly quiet when I was on Moose.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. I meant to ask that to Dave.
Yeah, that was a challenge for Cedar Creek. We were evacuated, the Reed team, and the firefighters on the line effectively all pulled back. We did have one of our Reeds help operations sort of as traffic cop to get the equipment out. We were in Eugene for 2 days while we waited that out, and then we were allowed to go back. And after that, the weather became a lot more moderate, and it has been since. We'll see what the future brings, but I think we're going into a cooler, wetter period there.
Yeah, and
Thank
Pete,
you,
as
Tom.
for the moose fire, yeah, when Tom handed it off, we were definitely on a repair trajectory, and then that kind of changed all of a sudden, and it, the fire took an 8 mile run, expanded about 15,000 acres in one day, and yeah, it sounds like a similar story to Cedar, in that, everyone was bailing off the line, including the Reeds, of course, and a couple of Reeds actually were able to help shuttle rigs and move people off more effectively.
Awesome. So Dave, yeah, that was where I thought you were in the mix. There was kind of thought you were coming in as a third to a half of the fire was maybe at least a third was contained and starting to go into a repair phase, and still active firefighting, a lot of indirect on the southern part, but then in one day or in one afternoon, half a day, that really turned around. So lessons for you this year, plus and minus both, from your assignment there on Moose?
Yeah, for sure. And like Tom said, every assignment's a great opportunity to learn new stuff from new people and work with a lot of great people, because the Reed community for the most part is a lot of really great people, and the Moose assignment was definitely another one of those. I will say the Salmon Chalice, one of the positive things for me on this fire was their agency admins and AREPs were first rate. They really they cared about the resource, and therefore they were really interested in our input, and they had a mechanism by which any ground disturbance went through the Reeds and to them for approval. And actually, for the most part, this was for the size of this fire, it's a relatively low impact fire from the standpoint of ground disturbance. So I give credit to the line officers. Other things that worked well for me coming in kind of probably a month into the fire at that point. Usually at that stage, the local folks are pretty tapped, and it was definitely that case when I got there on Moose. But to their credit, we had, just enough local Reed presence, especially local ARCs, who did stay engaged or got re-engaged, and really that local knowledge, knowing, everyone at the local unit, and understanding, all the locations of key resources. It's hard to beat having some level of local representation. So I'd say, for big kind of season-long incidents like Moose, if the local unit can kind of meter people out to ensure that there's always one or two locals present and participating as resource advisors, I think that's an ideal situation, and we did have that. Another thing that went well was, like I was saying at the outset, just really great resource advisors and fireline ARCs. top to bottom in this group. Tom and Greta left us in good shape with solid folks, and then we were able to pull in some additional really solid folks as well that really to a person struck that perfect balance of resource advocacy and understanding of suppression goals, tactics, strategies, and IMT dynamics. So you really need both to be the most effective resource advisor. And then lastly, I'll say Tom DeMeo and Greta, his trainee, did a great job of transitioning with us. We overlapped by a day, and they also left a lot of good documentation, and that makes a big difference, as I think anyone who's served in this role knows when you're moving on to a fire or an effort that's ongoing to be able to hit the ground running. So appreciation to Tom for that, for sure.
Dave, thanks. No more assignments for you this year? You got your hands full, or are you still open?
I was down in New Mexico early in the season, and then I'm not sure at this point. I'll probably be getting out on a bear assignment or two maybe as the season kind of winds down.
Right on. Thanks. Marissa, Lynn, I'm doing a terrible job of monitoring the chat. Anything jumping out at you all?
I am not seeing it. I've just seen some back and forth. There was a publication on that pitting that was put in the chat, and some talk about the lawsuit on the Wenatchee about the far out contingency lines, and a link to a Fusey Fusey is the Forest Service Employees and Environmental Ethics Group, and they have there's an article from 2016 on some of the massive lawsuit and massive fire line.
Right on. Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah. Hey, Pete, can you hear me?
I can, Marissa. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I've been having problems with this mic. No, it seems like you're on top of it. But I think one thing was that Lynn covered. Sorry, are you hearing an echo?
Nope, got you good.
Okay, it's me. I'll have to deal with it. She covered it, but wanting to emphasize how someone had a question with the technical specialist, and they may be, too low on the totem pole to kind of receive hazard pay, but that's not the case. It's whether or not you're in an uncontrolled environment and working in those hazardous conditions. And there isn't a ranking of qualifications when it comes to getting hazard pay. So I thought that was something good to emphasize. But I think you've stayed on top of all the chats. People have been going back and forth a lot and helping answer everything. And I think there was a PowerPoint that was loaded, and I'm unable to get it downloaded, but perhaps it could be emailed to one of us and we could get it up on the Google Drive.
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate that, Marissa. And I think that's an important point, and one thing that Lynn and others have beat into my head is that can start with the documentation you do on your CTR, what you did that day. I was in Division X-ray working with the fuels reduction group or whatever it is. And that, we can help ourselves. That's not a magic bullet, but we can help ourselves sometimes by putting a statement on our eCTR and going from there. And folks, if you need to reach out, there's some folks here that have fought some of those battles and gotten some answers that can help us. There's some opinion papers. That's the wrong word. There's some clarification papers that have come out from the agencies last year, I believe, when this HPay issue reared its head. And those are on the Google Drive for the Read cohort. Sometimes you got to wait around a little bit to get to the place you need to be on the Google Drive, but there's a lot of good stuff there. And Daniel, thank you for sharing that that document. And if you would, share it with me, irvin.pete@gmail.com, or any of the cohort managers, and we'll get it into the Google Drive. Folks, looking at the clock on the wall, we're at time. I'm happy to stick around if folks want to discuss a little more, but let me give a couple ending comments just so that you realize that this is your resource advisor cohort, and it's grassroots, informal, unofficial, ongoing, nationwide, interagency, and extra organizational, voluntary and all volunteer. It is what you make it. I encourage you to look at the Google Drive. I encourage you to join and become a member of the cohort. It's painless and easy. I encourage you to make use of the resources provided, especially that list that Margaret and Lynn and others do a good job keeping up of incidents that are looking for help in the Read, Reef, and ARC world. Our next session is Wednesday, October 19th, always the third Wednesday, always from 8:30 to 9:30 Pacific time, translated into your time zone. Next month, we'll focus on wilderness and fire for resource advisors. Lynn, anything you'd like to add?
I just want to add on the hazard pay issue that this year in the Red Book, it says that all firefighters should be putting that little blurb about where they were working on the fire. So it's not just the leads that have to do it anymore, it's everybody. There's always a lot of issues with hazard pay across the board. So maybe we were groundbreakers on that. That's all I got. Everybody be safe out there. Have a great fall, and hopefully the fire season will end soon.
Yeah, folks, to all our participants, thanks for joining us today. And we'll look forward to seeing many of you again in October. And I encourage you to be a proud resource advisor. Tom and Dave, special thanks to you for joining and participating actively. Really appreciate that.
Sure, happy to do it.
Hey, Pete, did you say your email was irvin.pete@gmail.com?
That's it. IRVINE. And
I'll get that presentation over to you.
Perfect. What agency are you with, Daniel?
I'm BLM.
Copy that. Yep. Don't think we have any BLMers at the moment in the manager suite, but the other place to send it would be to any of the managers with USDA or Park Service, just in case it's so big it gets gommed up.
It's super small. It's only 5 slides and one of them's blank because I'm looking for references to put in the reference section. So
Perfect. We'll share it then. Thanks, Daniel. Good question. Generated a bunch of talk.
absolutely great. Hey, thank you much.
You bet. Hey, so help my Luddite brain, Lynn and Marissa. Does the chat show up in the recorded versions, or does it go away?
I don't think the chat shows up.
Okay.
Yeah, the chat does not show up. I think too, and but there's a transcript, and then the chat stays because we keep using the same link. The chat is there. People can go back and scroll through the old stuff. I think there is a way to punch out the chat as like a Word document or a text document. But I haven't tried that in a while.
Okay. That, thanks.
And through the Teams interface, people can go back and see the child lease within the Forest Service. It's on that kind of that column banner on the left side. So you can read the chat previously, but that's kind of what's unfortunate about a recording. It's not all inclusive and it's kind of not on the right side.
I think thanks for your help. Sorry to need so much of it. Thanks for joining, everybody. Be safe until next month.
Thanks, Pete, for facilitating. We'll see you.
Thanks, Pete, and thanks for the card.
Glad you got it.
Appreciate it. All right, have a great day.
Thanks. You all too. Probably good to end the recording, right?
Yeah, I can stop it, and I'll edit the beginning and